Welcome back to the Project Violet podcast. It's been a minute. Carrie, how are you doing?
I was going to say the same thing. It's been a while. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about.
Super excited. Yeah, I love that you've got the Project Violet purple on.
I do. That was on purpose,
Yes, and I've got my usual black.
which is expected and completely appropriate for you.
But I got the purple haze thing
You
there.
do. We're all good. I'll happily wear the purple. You wear the
There you
black and
go.
gray. I'll represent with the purple.
But it's an exciting day. So today we
It is.
are going to talk about a new community, a new product, something that we're launching on March 9th, Monday. It is called the Leadership Lab, and it's something that we've talked about and it's been on your mind. And
Yeah.
actually, I mean, why don't you talk about it, Carrie? Because I know this is something you're passionate about. So you're in leadership development all the time. But
Mhm.
I'm super excited to hear kind of your thoughts. But yeah, why don't you jump into it and give us a little bit about Leadership Lab?
I would love to so much. I To say it's a passion project is an understatement, don't you think? Like it has been such this true labor of love. I'm so excited to put it out there. And it is born out of this notion that, as you mentioned, like I've been in leadership development for years and working with organizations, to build programming for their people. And one of the things that we consistently see, even in the organizations who are doing it right, by some measure, if like if we had some sort of measuring stick in terms of how it's supposed to be done, there's generally a gap between and even data supports this, Daniel, that when people are high performing and they get placed into a role where now they're leading a team, whether it's the team they were on, which is super tricky, or it's a new team, right, where they have to get to know people while also trying to figure out how to lead. It's not until about 10 years later when they reach director level that they're actually developed or given the tools,
Hmm.
those foundational leadership tools to actually lead. I personally do not think that when you're a high performer that translates directly into I know how to lead other people. It's not intuitive, right? You and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
We have to learn and be taught how to navigate working with other people to get things done. Really great individual contributors have relied on themselves to do
Yeah,
that work, right?
absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
go
I've
ahead.
heard
I
that.
don't
So
want to
yeah,
do all
no,
the
no,
talking
yeah.
about it.
I've heard it so many times. Just like people get promoted because they're a high performer, but they're getting promoted to almost a level of incompetence because they don't know
Yes.
how to be a leader. They know how to do the task. They know how to execute. But leading and managing people is a completely different skill set. Um, and you're required to know that on day one.
Yes.
And I definitely think, yeah, companies aren't spending enough time investing in that.
They're absolutely not. And I think that this is, and I know, not think, I know that this is our solution to that. This is a place where, we are focused on those leadership fundamentals. And obviously that will enhance and grow too as people grow and rise, in their careers. But it's this relevant, real world. We like to keep it real. and,
Yeah.
and our bumps and bruises along the way of these, a couple of decades of learning and leading, we know, right? Like what people are up against at work and how to support them in that way.
Yeah.
It feels so exciting and so needed.
Yes. And as we were talking about this, there was kind of some statistics that kind of back up exactly what you just said and things that studies that we were reading and thinking about that really helped us shape kind of what we thought the community would be and what content we wanted to put in there and what kind of development paths that would be available within the Leadership Lab. So I'm just going to talk about a few of them, then we can riff on it a bit. And then what I was hoping we could do is just jump really quick into the community, give people a quick tour of what's in there, and talk about specifically why we chose some of the kind of development spaces that we've
Yeah,
built.
I love
Um,
it.
so number one, I think this one was a big surprise and something that I think is so relevant today is this was a 10-year trending analysis by Perceptics. And essentially, they're saying that the new driver of employee engagement is how employees perceive how senior leaders manage change. So this was something that they've been doing a 10-year analysis of what is driving employee engagement. I think this showed up on their list a few years ago, but just last year it rocketed up to number one.
Mm-hmm.
So the number one driver of employee engagement now, how your employees kind of come to work and feel engaged and are doing their best work, is based on how they perceive you as a senior leader
Mm-hmm.
and how you are managing change in your organization. So
That's,
what are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, makes perfect sense to me. I'll tell you, because we know that change is the one constant. We've seen it, to your point, escalate, right? Or multiply, across the board. We're all managing something new and different almost every day. And when we are looking to, our senior leaders are the people that we're supposed to look to for that guidance and for that sense of calm and direction and even vulnerability to a degree, right? We're managing it together, but we're keeping everybody informed about what's happening, and they're not getting it. I mean, in our work, we see it all the time. Leaders who care deeply, senior leaders care. They just don't have the tools. No
Hmm.
one's helping them or guiding them into this way to manage change. I mean, we know that there are tools, right, that work that we can use to apply to that, and people aren't employing them, I guess.
Absolutely. And that's going to be one of the things that we're working on right now in the community. So managing change and helping
Mm-hmm.
these new leaders or even experienced leaders, how do you deal with change and how do you, bring your teams and your people along? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's going to be something that's a focus in the community, and we're working on something right now for that. So
I
stay
was just
tuned,
talking about it
everyone.
this morning,
There you go.
actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. So number two, and you've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but we definitely read a lot of studies about kind of this leadership crisis that's going on. It's more of a trend. It's always there, but the stat is 77% of organizations report a lack of sufficient leadership depth in their
Mm-hmm.
organization. So they're looking at their leadership teams and they're kind of thinking we don't have enough great leaders to really drive the business forward. On the second stat, and this is from the leadership forecast of 2025 by a company called DDI, and we'll link the these studies in the links below. But they're saying that those leaders that they're talking about that they don't have depth, 72% of those leaders report stress from their roles and feel used up by the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
right.
there's a lack of leadership depth. The leaders that are there are completely stressed out and feeling used up at the end of the day. That's kind of a sad story, but I think it's a very true story in a lot of companies.
Well, and I think our work is born out of compassion for these people. And this idea that, I mean, they are so drained and they're expected to do their individual contributor role, because that's what's happening here. I think if we can infer, what's going on in a leader's day, it's that they have all these things that they're responsible for that they have to do individually or independently, and then they have to guide other people through what they're trying to do every single
Yeah.
day without the right tools,
And
right,
trying to
or
figure it
training,
out
or
on
yeah.
their own. Yeah. So
It is wild. It is wild to think what people are navigating, and they're exhausted and they just want somewhere to turn that feels um, approachable, and I think also relatable, and that can be self-paced. I think that's something that we have to also focus and make sure our audience knows, Daniel, is that the content and the expertise that we're bringing this our community is stuff that is can be consumed on their own time, so it doesn't feel like one more thing that's loaded into their day that they have to get through. It can really fit into their day as it already exists.
yeah, we thought a lot about that as we're designing the content of like how can you learn in the flow of work? So you're
Mm-hmm.
already extremely busy. How can we give you valuable information, tactical advice, but also practical tools that you can use
Mm-hmm.
immediately, and figuring that out in the shortest amount of time. So that's definitely something we've been thinking about. I honestly think a lot of people that this could speak to is, you're a new leader or you're an aspiring leader. You want to
Mm-hmm.
grow. You feel like everything's changing all the time, and the last thing is like you kind of feel isolated at work. Like you don't have a safe space to go to talk
Mm-hmm.
about what you're struggling with, to get some peer mentorship or
Mm-hmm.
just any type of support in a community. Which leads to the last stat that really drove us towards how we're designing the community, especially bringing on kind of new advisors and ambassadors to kind of drive this connection. But we do feel like there is a quote unquote connection recession that's happening,
Yes.
driven a lot by, unfortunately, technology and how that's moving so quickly and how it's kind of warping our brains. We're always in our
Mm-hmm.
phones. The statistic here, and this was a workplace survey conducted by KPMG, which we will link again below. 45% of workers feeling isolated and alone at work.
Mm-hmm.
So almost half. This stat kind of stuck out, but 70%, 77% of Gen Z say they felt lonely on the job, which is almost
77%.
percent. So almost all of them. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Almost all of them.
so the Gen Z generation, they're feeling lonely at work, and everyone as a whole, almost half of people feel isolated at work. So I definitely think that is something that hopefully this community can address, but something that we've been thinking about.
Well, connection is key. And you know what else I thought about while you were talking about? I think these two stats together, like the one about the widening leadership, the gap in the leadership crisis, where there's just not enough depth, on the bench, for people to
Hmm.
step into these leadership roles. It also, I think, has something to do with the Gen Z in the workplace. And I'll stay with me. I'm going to try to like draw that line of also like they're seeing this world, Daniel, where, and I've experienced it myself, in my own career, where you're viewing or you're experiencing people lead in a way that they were taught, right? So we're not going to sit here and point fingers or blame, older generations for how they led in the workplace, but there's a very different idea of like leading that we subscribe to, this, human centric way to lead, where we believe deeply that you can be kind and empathetic
Hmm.
towards someone who you work with or who reports to you, but also get things done, right? We're here to execute, we're here to solve problems, we're here to meet deadlines, but we can also do it in a way that's incredibly kind and considerate of a person as a whole being. And I think where the disconnect is for Gen Z, or at least I've read this, I know this from even reading, I read a book called When We're in Charge, by Amanda Littman, who's really fantastic. And she talks about like, Gen Z viewing, and even, young millennials viewing this way of leadership that they're experiencing at the very tippy top of these organizations, and how it does not speak to the way that Gen Z wants to show up for each other at work. And so why wouldn't they don't want to be leaders, right? So there's, I think it's also contributing to it, where they're looking at this and saying, I don't want that. Why would I
Yeah.
want that? Right? They're overworked, they're exhausted, they're mean, right?
Yeah. Why would I want that for my
Why
life?
would I want
So
that?
leadership
Seriously,
is
they're
not
not
for
even
me.
putting they're not even raising their hand, Daniel, for
Yeah.
these roles,
Yeah.
because
It's
they're not
interesting.
being taught to lead in this really kind, you know, all encompassing, human centric way.
Yeah. No, that's actually very interesting. So like the pipeline of leaders is shrinking because people don't want that role,
Right.
based on what they're seeing.
I
Yeah.
think, I mean, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and this is one of the few times in life where we have so many different generations in the workplace as well. I think
There's
that's
five of them
that
in the
five
work,
generations
five
in the
generations in the
workplace.
workplace right
People are
now. Yeah.
retiring later. We've got kind of the new generation coming in. So there's a huge spread, and each generation probably needs a different type of leader or responds to different types of leadership, which makes
Mm-hmm.
it even harder for leaders
That's
right
right.
now to get everyone on board and aligned because yeah, you're really speaking to like different generations, different types of people that need different things. So it's a really complicated time right now to be a leader.
I think it is. And I would, just in the interest of like giving people resources too that we're,
Hmm.
known to want to do, there's a really cool study that Purdue Global did that where they outline, and there's even infographics where they talk about each of the generations and what drove, like what really shaped the generation in terms of like, global events or even, events, domestically, and how they perceive work and the relationship to their employer, like all those things inform how we show up. And so none of them are wrong. I think that's what I love about the study too, is like as you're navigating, connecting with people of different generation in the workplace or leading them, as we're talking about, um, it's not wrong to behave a certain way necessarily, right? But it is on the leader to try to understand, what each of these people needs, from you as their leader. And I think it's almost like our approach in this human centric way, Daniel, is almost a hack to that. It's like, well, if you just kind to everybody and you're thoughtful and you understand where they're coming from, you could potentially, be successful in leading them. Like there is, right, that baseline of like,
It's definitely a big
that's the
piece of
hack.
it for sure.
Everybody needs that, at work.
Absolutely. Why don't we jump into the community really quick,
Yeah,
just
let's do
to
it.
give people a quick preview of kind of how it's set up and the
Mm-hmm.
different spaces that we decide to focus on. Um, all right, so when you jump in for the first time, you'll come to this welcome page, and we definitely encourage people to check it out, where you can meet the community team, which is myself, Carrie, and Jen, and
Mm-hmm.
you can read our profiles there to get to know us a little more. Would love for everyone to check out the advisors and ambassadors. We have a very strong list of people that we think
Mm-hmm.
will bring a lot of great ideas and engagement to the community. So definitely check that out. And then we have some guidelines there. Um,
Yep.
on the left-hand panel is where you can navigate through these kind of major spaces for learning, for growing, for sharing. I'm going to start at the bottom. So this is a section called tactical management. And the thought process here is for a lot of people who are aspiring leaders or even people who have moved in leadership positions, they are usually given a new responsibility of leading some kind of a strategic initiative. So
Mm-hmm.
this is something that drives the business forward. That's really important. That has a lot of senior leadership visibility. This is the place you go for that. So if you've never
Mm-hmm.
led a project before, or you really want to take on some more responsibility and lead one of these projects, this is a great place for you to go to figure out how to do that. So very
Mm-hmm.
tactical. There's a lot of kind of bite-sized tutorials, a lot of templates, a lot of thoughts on how do you lead effectively
Mm-hmm.
for those types of initiatives. And we also have a manager playbook that we're building, and this is going to help new managers from the first day you're a new manager through the end of your first year, and kind of give you guidance throughout those kind of core areas of how do you kind of set yourself up to be a good leader, how do you build the right kind of operating and communication rhythm with your team, and then how do you develop your team and then kind of keep it sustainable for the years to come.
And
So
may I just say,
go ahead.
so you're responsible for most of the content in this section,
Mm.
of the community. And let me tell you, people, it's worth its weight in gold. You will not believe the amount of resources that are there in terms of even just the templates. I mean, Daniel, you are a slide master. Like the slides that you create, I've never heard like someone not say like, oh my gosh, who made this? This is incredible. And they're all available to everyone in the community. You have created incredible resources that really do take these ideas, that we're talking about and all these, the content
Mm.
that we've created, and then allow them that straight line to being able to practice it or apply it immediately.
Yeah, I think is one of the things that I'm very proud of in there, like the toolkits and templates. And it's not just that they're good looking slides. I think that's definitely one. There's a design element to it, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of thought behind how these
Yes.
slides are built, why they're built, and how
Yes.
you use them in these different parts of a project.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of thought behind it, and it's super super helpful. I know I've used all of these, and they're battle tested in
Right. That's the
running
other
these
really
very
important piece of it, isn't it?
yeah.
Like these aren't just like, developed in a lab, without any sort of,
No, they've been
like
used
tried and
and
true testing. Yeah.
refined over the years, and some of the most complex projects, from small companies to Fortune 500,
Right.
Fortune 50
And
companies.
listen, there's nothing you don't do anything without a tremendous amount of thought behind it either. I know that
Yeah,
about you.
thank you for saying that. Yeah, so that's all in the tactical management section. We also have the consulting bootcamp. We'll have a version of that. So if people are just curious on what kind of the top consulting firms do to train their people, you can get insight into that through the consulting bootcamp, which is going to be in the tactical management section as well.
Hmm.
Moving up, we have a section for AI. So AI upskilling. We
Hmm.
are going to, as we launch on Monday, start releasing some of our AI Foundations course, which I think everyone needs to have as basics. Definitely working with AI is a big part of work now, and everyone needs to figure that out, especially as a leader. And we have a space to share, learn, and to talk about your AI use cases, how you're building your workflows, and maybe the prompts if you're willing to share what's working for you. And then we have a whole playbook of how do you kind of build AI adoption, AI enablement on your teams.
Hmm.
And the big part, so this is at the top when you come in, is leadership development. And Carrie has put to get together some fantastic content and more to come, especially
Hmm.
around managing change. But Carrie, why don't you talk a little bit about these two courses that are going to launch immediately once we go on Monday?
Yeah, you bet. I think that's the key too, is like more to come. Like I can't stop thinking about more content, right? And building it up to where it really will be this powerhouse for people to be able to come back to time and again. The leadership development, as you mentioned, is broken into essentially two courses. So we focus first on, and both of them focus on the fundamentals that people actually need, as we've been talking about, right? With this, through this lens or this foundation of being, kind and thoughtful and empathetic as a leader, while also driving to outcome. And I think people need self-awareness. They need to understand who they are before they can successfully lead other people. So we have content around understanding our own core values. I mean, work that I didn't do, Daniel, until I was in my 40s. This is what we're bringing to people to experience at any point, in their career, even early on, as we've been talking about. There's sections on communication, really understanding how we connect with people through how we communicate and how we're aware of how our communication lands with other people. We talk about how to influence other people, especially when we don't have the authority, right, in a title or some sort of role, right, where people have to listen to us. We talk about emotional intelligence. That happens to be one of my favorite topics to talk about, and one of the longest lessons because by 10 minutes longer, because I have so much to say about it. I think, and then we transition to pieces in leading others, right? So how do you handle a difficult conversation, which means how do I give someone feedback that's really thoughtful, but also moves, changes the behavior in some way or
Mhm.
inspires someone to change their behavior? How do I have a coaching conversation? How do I present to senior leadership? All of these things are things you have to navigate as somebody who is, rising in your career. And so,
Yeah.
how do we do that in a way that is practical, right? That you can absolutely take the lessons and apply them right away with the things that you, even as we mentioned, have added, in terms of the tactical piece. I mean, this is stuff that you can listen to and apply literally that afternoon or tomorrow, right? Not someday in this vague future.
Yeah, I love that. I think the difficult conversations is one of my favorites. I think I think a lot of people will be running towards that one.
Listen,
Uh,
I think you're right. And I'll tell you, like, that's my most requested. Anytime I talk to anybody, they're like, that's what we want you to talk about.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially as a new leader, it's a conversation that you've never led before or
Or
facilitated.
actively avoided.
And actually, I think that's true. Like most new leaders avoid those conversations,
Yes.
and I think with the tools and kind of the guidance that you're giving, they will be well equipped to have those and not
I hope
shy
so. That's
shy
my
from them.
goal. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love the approach, leading self, leading others. As far as when you join the community, we are going to kick off with leadership development. So we're
Yeah.
moving into our first kind of community learning kind of roadmap, and we're going to start with leading self. And I think that's a great way to start. You kind of have to figure out yourself first,
You do.
and real, I'm going to be working on my leadership manifesto
Yes.
as we go
Good.
through that,
Uh huh.
and from there, moving to leading others, as well as, like I said before, we will have our AI foundations kind of dripping out as well, as
Mm-hmm.
part of our launch. So a lot to come. We are going to talk about it on this podcast,
Yes.
and we are going to launch on Monday, March 9th. So hope
March
everyone
9th.
stays tuned and check us out on March 9th.
Yes. Check us out.
It'll be awesome.
It
All
will.
right. Thanks, Gary. This has
All
been
right.
great.
Talk to you soon.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.